Your first time on a motorcycle was while training to become a motor cop. Do you recognize how uncommon and remarkable that journey is? Where did that thought come from in the first place?
So that thought came with the department I worked for, working Mardi Gras. Of course, we're in New Orleans, so we got Mardi Gras. In order to make Mardi Gras work, you need motorcycles to escort floats, VIPs, presidents come in town, and all that. So 1 year for Mardi Gras, working in the stationary position, standing up, and I see these bikes come through, escorting 40, 50 floats, buses, and all that. I said, man, that look like that's a cool spot. So I asked the guy who's been on the department longer than me, I said, what you gotta do to be certified on a motorcycle to do that? He's like, I'm gonna tell you this, a lot of people don't make it through those classes. He said, you can start off with a class of 20. Now that 20, you'll probably only get 5 that actually pass intense training with that class. So he was like, you just write a paper to your immediate supervisor saying you're requesting to go through motorcycle training or motor cop training. It's like, all right, cool, I'll do that. So I submitted my paperwork and was waiting to hit back. So fast forward 6 months later, I get a response from the traffic commander. Hey, I seen you put in this paper to go through motor school. Are you still interested? Yes, sir, I'm still interested. Well, we got a class starting in September. Be ready. Okay, I'm ready. And that's how that thought came.
That's wild. That's wicked. Your first time ever on a bike?
First time ever on a bike was that September when I started the training.
Crazy, man. Interesting. Okay, you know I ride sport bikes, right?
Yes.
And one thing that I'm afraid of is even attempting to get on a Harley Davidson bike. How was that for you?
So a Harley Davidson to me, it's intimidating because of the size, and especially somebody coming from my background with no motorcycle or bike training at all. No clutch training, none of that. No gear training, none of that. So it was intimidating to cram all this into a 2-week, possibly 3-week class. So it was guaranteed 2 weeks, but for you to make it to the 3rd week, you have to pass the first 2 weeks. So if I got washed out in the first 2 weeks, I didn't get the 3rd week of training because I got washed out in classes. I was over.
About how many pounds do you think a Harley Davidson actually weighs?
From training class and dropping that bike, possibly at least 1,000 times. I asked one of the instructors, how much does this bike weigh? And he said between 1,200 and 1,500 pounds.
Lord have mercy. That's 3-4 times the weight that bike right there actually weighs.
Yes.
So,
and they train you to pick it up in the proper techniques to pick it up if you drop it, because 9 times out of 10, if you drop it, you're by yourself. So they train you in a way where you could properly pick it up without hurting yourself. If you're in a position where you drop it and you're by yourself.
So would you mainly drop the bike during a maneuver?
Yes. So it would be, most of the time you drop it, it's doing usually a slow pace or a slow speed maneuver. So, but the training, like I said, the training was intense. Day 1, I was like, no way in the world I'm gonna pass this class. I say, but I'm not gonna quit. They're gonna tell me you gotta go home because you're not cutting it. But I say, it's just the stuff they want me to do with this big bike, it's nowhere in the world I can do it. But I'm not gonna tell them I can't do it. They're gonna have to tell me you're not doing it, so you gotta go home. You see, after that 4th to 5th day, everything went to clicking. I was like, oh, I see the end of the tunnel. I possibly could pass this class. You're doing, which we call a keyhole. Basically, I think it's 15 feet wide, and you bringing that bike inside of a keyhole and doing a 360 to the left and to the right without dropping and coming out, without dropping the cones or hitting the cones or anything like that. So once you feel like you could do that, like, man, it's once I say, if I can pass this class, that's gonna be the one exercise that is gonna hold me back, because ain't nowhere in the world I'm gonna come in there into this little small keyhole and do a 360 in this keyhole.
So doing a keyhole and a 360, doing the 360 in the keyhole, what was the most rigorous part of the training?
you once you come in there, you got to know your exact position of where to cut your wheel at and how to lock your arms. Lock your arms. They always tell you lock your arms and turn your head around. So if you keep those two techniques aligned with each other, locking your arms and turning your head, you're gonna make it out. You just got to keep those techniques in your mind. And every exercise that we did, every exercise that's a part of motor school training is unique because it teaches you what you actually need to know when you're out on the road to survive accidents or crowd or maneuvering in tight situations. Like, we got this thing where we get up to 45 miles an hour and you got to break it down because an object appeared in the road. You got to break it down also while maneuvering around whatever object that came in your path.
Gotcha. So, being that you made it through the training, how was it for the first time hitting the open road and actually feeling the breeze on the bike?
So, fast forward, I passed the first 2 weeks of class, so I got the third week which is escort training. So in order to do escort training, you have to pass the first 2 weeks. So fast forward, I passed the first 2 weeks, do escort training. So keep in mind, we escorting the instructors, so they know exactly how everything's supposed to be. So you're not getting escort training on somebody say, hey, I need an escort from point A to point B. You actually escorting the instructors, so they know exactly where you're supposed to set up at, where you're not supposed to set up, the proper safety techniques, everything. So week 3 of that was like, man, that was nerve-wracking because you at a fast pace. You got funerals, you got weddings, you got the president coming in town, you got VIPs coming in town, you got charter buses, you got 18-wheelers, and you compacting all this into a 1-week course where you're doing all this, and in your mind, you got to be on cue with everything, because one bad decision could be fatal on that bike.
That seems like a lot to process, even in my mind, thinking about it right now.
Yes, and everything has been done in the moment. And also on top of that, you dealing with people, you could explain to them exactly what you want them to do for us, the drivers. You could explain exactly what you want them to do to make this a safe escort. But sometimes that don't always go to plan. So you also got to keep in mind of not only the people outside the escort, but the actual people who's part of the escort, because they could make the escort harder than what it is by not following the directions you give them.
And so how do you improvise when that situation occurs?
So a lot of times, safety is first. So you got to stop the escort and explain to them, look, to make this a safe escort, I need you to pay attention to what I'm doing. So whatever cue I give you, if I raise my hand, if I get over and raise my hand, that means get over with me. It don't mean do your own thing. If you see something ahead, that don't mean just go around. I'm going to give you the cue on what to do.
Understood. At one point, you were involved in a serious accident that left you hospitalized for a couple of months, facing the possibility of never walking again. Can you take us back to that day and tell us what happened?
Yeah, so that day, just finished an escort, was heading home. A storm was coming, so I was heading to go home to put the bike up. And coming off the Huey Long Bridge, I was in the far left lane, doing about 45, 50 miles an hour. And it was an oh shit moment that came where a guy tried to navigate a left turn where he shouldn't have tried to navigate a left turn directly in front of my pad, which caused a T-bone accident. Oh shit. Next thing you know, I remember waking up in the hospital.
Man. So when you woke up in the hospital, what was actually said to you?
I remember most excruciating pain ever. It was worst, played sports, played everything, no broken bones, nothing. And I remember waking up in the most excruciating pain. And I remember my boss told me, he got and brought some joy to the situation. Like, look, I know they got a storm coming, but if you wanted to take off, you could have just told me, I would have gave you off.
Yeah.
And that kind of brought a laughter to me in the midst of everything that was going on.
Yeah. So at one point, you realized that you couldn't move your legs.
Yes.
Did the doctors ever tell you that you weren't going to walk again?
Yes, it was a possibility. And of course, I'm heavily medicated with my injuries. I got they did some CT scan, CAT scans. I got a broken hip, broken tib, broken fibula. Knee is all jacked up, busted, swollen like a busted hot dog. And I remember being in the hospital room, and they had a guy, in hospital rooms, I'm in ICU, wherever, and they got a guy to the left of me, and I'm heavily medicated, and I jumped up when I heard the doctor or the nurse talk, we have to amputate it. I'm like, what you mean we have to amputate it? And I literally like instantly jumped up, but actually was talking to the guy in the room next to me who was a diabetic who had issues with one of his legs due to his diabetes. So that was like, man, you can't tell me at the time, but I was 29, 30 years old that you have to amputate one of my limbs. I was like, no, that's not right. So, but of course I'm heavily medicated, so I'm trying to, process everything that's going on. And the lady said, no, that's not you. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. You jacked up pretty bad, but you're gonna be fine. It's gonna be a lot of rehab. My first shower came 3 months after my injury because I was getting bird bathed in the hospital until I actually got transferred to inpatient rehab at Turo, where I actually sat on a gurney and had a shower because I needed assistance with everything. And at that time, I'm like, man, I'll never touch another motorcycle a day in my life. I'm like, it's done. I'm done with that bike.
Yes, indeed. So, okay, during that time in the hospital, all this running through your mind, what kept you motivated to keep fighting?
I think it was my family, and also my thought. Even when I told you at the beginning, I was never quitting. I said, look, in this class, they're gonna have to send me home. I'm not gonna quit. So I'm like, it's another challenge. I was like, look, if I'm here for a reason. After all this happened, I'm here for a reason. So I'm gonna push through, because if this was the end of my story, this accident could have killed me. So I'm like, I survived the accident, so that's not the end of my story. So I could literally push through and do PT and try to get back to as 100% possible how I was pre-accident.
Interesting. We family, but just knowing all of this right now, just sitting there thinking about it, like, it's wild. So at what point did you actually believe and you knew that you were going to walk again?
PT guy, and his name was Miles at Turo, and he pushed me, even in inpatient rehab when I had another PT tech. They pushed me and they was like, look, we've seen injuries far worse than what you have, and people survive. And he said, with your injuries, you could rehab and you could get back on the bike. I was like, hell with that, I'm not getting back on the bike. And as time progressed and I was able to do more things, I was able to, bend down, tie my own shoes. I was able to walk without the crutches, without the, this is how I pretty much graduated. I left the hospital in a wheelchair, graduated to a walker, went from walker to crutches, from a crutches to, slow pace walking on my own. So I'm like, as I get better, I'm like, man, it's a possibility. I may get back on a bike, because I'm seeing a recovery. And at first I was optimistic about saying, man, I don't think I'm gonna have the strength and it is to get back on a bike. And as I started recovering and I started getting the strength, I was like, I may get back on a bike.
Interesting. So at one point, when you very first got injured, you said F the bike. But after you gained mobility again, you became optimistic about getting on a bike. But my thing is, most people would never ride again after an experience like that. What pulled you back to motorcycles, and how did you overcome the fear of being hurt again?
So at the time when I got back on a bike, I think I was in law enforcement at that time, 13 years. And in those 13 years, I said, going through motor school was the most relaxing part of this job when you're out on a bike. You used to, you're responding to domestic calls, homicides, armed robberies, petty theft, car robberies, car burglaries. And being on a bike is like a part of the job where you actually feel at ease when you're on a bike. It's a relaxing part. Like, I'm pretty sure how you got recreational bike riders and they feel like that's their free time. That's the time where they clear their mind on the bike. And that's how I feel being on a bike in a law enforcement capacity was my time to clear my mind and take me away from the everyday duties of law enforcement.
So everything in a nutshell sounds like even though you're at work, it doesn't feel like you're at work.
Correct.
'Cause it's something that you actually love doing.
Yes, correct.
I appreciate all of that. You know, I got to know you a whole lot better than most family members today. Being that I'm your family member, and you know I ride a motorcycle for recreational use only. You were hit on a police-issued motorcycle. Is there ever a moment of time where you are in constant fear knowing that I'm on a motorcycle?
Yes, because like I said, being on a police motorcycle with decals, lights, sirens, blaring, and accidents among police officers on motorbikes are high, just like they're great with people on recreational bikes are high. Especially knowing in your case, you use your recreational bike basically as your primary source of transportation. So anytime there's an accident, whether a serious accident or a fatality that's get reported, you know, you go to thinking about all your loved ones and your family members that actually arrived. And you kind of think about you first because you use it as your primary source of transportation.
And there have actually been a few times when you called me right after a motorcycle accident. And so how was the relief knowing that it wasn't me that was involved in the accident?
It's a great deal of relief. And also, you know, you look at it, a lot of people look at people who ride motorcycles as a brotherhood or family or whatever. So it gives you a sense of relief when it's not your loved one, but it also brings you a sense of pain because you know somebody else got to deal with their family member being killed or seriously hurt on a motorcycle.
Yes, indeed.